more sort of planning and meetings beforehand. And I would say to any of those sort of young people listening, try and have as many, it's helpful to have meetings beforehand, isn't it? And to make sure, it's conducted in a very controlled and peaceful way. Because the moment in Hong Kong, I was saying to you earlier that I thought Hong Kong's got a very low threshold. The moment anyone's aggressive or violent, then you're going to get criticised heavily for it. Would you agree with that?
Of course, because for a movement, you have to not only win the battle, you have to win the hearts of the Hong Kong people, especially those did not participate in it. That's the main purpose of your movement, right? But if you do it in a so violent way that the general public may not accept it. Yeah. And that's the way that those organizers have to strike the balance.
To be fair on the post-80s group and the activists there, I wouldn't say that they were actually violent. They might have been noisy and a bit sort of pushing and shoving.
Yeah, better term.
But the problem is with the because Hong Kong's got such a low threshold, there's a danger that you might be criticised as being violent by some elements within some people in the media, and if there is a way of being totally, it's possible to be totally silent, but create a powerful demonstration. And hints of that, I think, from what I saw of it, there was that happening a bit. For example, the demonstration. There's one quite interesting one outside Government House where a group of about 1,000 people just sat totally peacefully in the road. That's a very powerful demonstration, actually.
Yes.
No one was arrested for it, but it's powerful. It makes a pretty strong impact, and it's totally silent and very quiet. Actually, just look at there's a photo of them just peacefully sitting in the road, and that's quite a big headache for the police to sort out, actually. But obviously there were some which were a bit more sort of pushing and shoving and so on.
I talked to you just now about that during our dinner.
During a Japanese restaurant?
Yes, in a restaurant. I think it is very important for those participants and the organizers to think what is the major objective of this movement. I use the term end, E-N-D, end. Yeah. End means objective in one way, and on the other, it means when will you end the movement? At what time will you end the movement? How would you perceive the movement should be ended? Right? And that is a very important point. I discussed this with Long Hair about that. If we have a preconceived plan, we have to think, we make it chaotic. This is our end. Then we have to push the police content, of course, and try to fight with the police. You want that? Do we want that? Okay, if we want that we have to organize the people to push the content, right? If we want a peaceful sit-in protest until the government, the police move us away, that is another end. Okay? But for those organizers in the real protest, they don't think about that. How to end your movement? At what time? That's the major problem of this movement, and I think they have there are rooms for improvement for that movement. If they thought about the end beforehand, they know how to do it. For example, during the rail protest, they can go around the Legislative Council, or you block the major roads and don't let those government officials and those legislators to come out. That's your end, right? That's your objective. So we try our very best to do so. But it is a peaceful way. Okay? They cannot go away. This is not our fault. This is not our problem.
And in some ways, there were elements of that demonstration which is quite effective in some ways, I think.
Yes.
More than perhaps we've seen before in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of whether it went there. In terms of the argy-bargy pushing with the police, whether that was just the slightly wrong direction to go in. Do you sort of mean that it's possible to be, to be powerful and effective without just being putting yourself in danger of being criticised for being slightly aggressive or violent. You see,
Yeah.
And the idea, I would say, is you've got to try to think of making the government and the police look bad rather
Yes.
than, and that constantly should be.
This is the major concept we have to bear in mind to make the government look bad.
Right.
Okay? How to make it?
And that's exactly what different democracy movements around the world,
Yeah.
in a very clever way, manage to do, actually,
Yeah.
and mobilise local and international support, actually.
Otherwise, we have to think about revolution to overthrow the government. That is another way of doing the movement. But if we want a peaceful evolution of the government, okay, that's another way. That means what you said about a peaceful demonstration is very important. This is a very important means to an end to make the government look bad, right? And I personally think those youngsters, they don't thought very seriously about that. I cannot say they are violent, but they are noisy, as you said. At that moment, they should have a very peaceful sit-in, because you have too many people already. You don't have to be violent, just like what we did in the past. We have just a handful of people. We have to make a noise to the whole world, right? We have to burn the tie and then make the whole world listen to us. A little bit violent, but more than 1,000 people. That's enough. That's enough for the whole world to listen to us. And that's the good way that I suggest to block the roads. Sit in peacefully. Don't have to argue with the police. Don't have to fight with them. Don't have to push the content. But block the main roads. That makes the government very embarrassed.
Yeah, because the government, at some point, the police will come in and aggressively try to take people away, and people have done nothing wrong, and it will make the government and the police look bad when they do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, going back to this, I mean, the post 80s generation, quite a lot of them are not members of LSD. I mean, the majority, perhaps a quarter of those young people are.
I believe
members,
a quarter.
About a quarter, but obviously the others aren't. They've joined through Facebook or other groups, and I mean that's going to be an interesting thing to see quite how LSD and the other organised political groups try to sensibly talk with. The younger activists who are coming along, who are sort of joining demonstration, and to get them to see quite how it's to do it in a very peaceful and effective way.
The first thing I bear in mind about this kind of movement,